Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel, A Resilient Life. I'm Ronnie. Let's talk about the burden of making payments your entire life. I'm retired now. I'm 100% debt free. I'm also mortgage free. I'm not rich, but I certainly feel like I am because I don't owe anyone anything, which gives me autonomy and an enormous amount of freedom. None of this would have been possible if I had followed the typical American lifestyle of managing personal finances. Now, let me explain. Dave Ramsey's most famous quote is this: "If you will live like no one else, later you can live like no one else." In other words, if you're willing to make sacrifices now that most people aren't willing to make, then later on, you'll be able to live a lifestyle that those people will never be able to live. Now, I've experienced this myself, and I'm living it now. Making sacrifices early in life, when I was a young man, came to me almost intuitively, and I began to do that. And I did this even before Dave Ramsey coined the phrase. But nevertheless, it's still absolutely true. If you will live like no one else, later, you will be able to live like no one else. Consider these statistics of the typical American lifestyle. It's estimated that 70% of Americans right now are living paycheck to paycheck. Almost 60% of people say that they couldn't put their hands on $1,000 cash in the event of an emergency. The average person carries $8,000 or more in credit card debt. The average new car payment is $750 a month or more. The leading cause of divorce is money problems and money fights. Student loans average between $40,000 and $100,000, while at the same time the average income in America is less than $60,000 a year. Now maybe it's just me, but going into that kind of debt just so that you can make less than $60,000 a year doesn't seem like a good idea. For many people, making payments is a way of life, and they make payments their entire lives. They work their entire lives earning $1 million or more in income, and it all flows back out in the form of payments, and they have nothing to show for it. Then, when they get to the end of their life, they say, "I sure hope that the government takes care of me." So, by all measurements, the typical American lifestyle is living paycheck to paycheck with no emergency fund, with debt up to your eyeballs, driving a car you really can't afford, making payments your entire life, and never able to retire. I would like to share with you a personal story about my own journey, but before I do, I want to ask a favor. Please be sure to hit that thumbs up button that you'll find down below, because YouTube uses the number of likes to promote videos in its algorithm. And I want this video to be promoted because I want to be able to help as many people as possible. And so I'm thanking you in advance. Very quickly, here's my journey. When my wife and I first got married, it was 42 years ago, we were kids when we married. And we had three sources of income. I had a job, she had a job, and then I was able to work overtime every now and then for additional money. Now, even though we had three sources of income, we based our standard of living and our lifestyle on one of those incomes. We based our income on my paycheck, and everything else went into the bank. Each week when she got paid, we didn't cash the check, we didn't do anything. It went straight into savings. And then anytime I was able to work overtime, like on the weekends, I'd make time and a half on Saturday and double time on Sundays. Anytime I got to work overtime, we banked that money as well. Well, as you can imagine, the money very quickly piled up. And within 18 months, we had saved enough money to be able to put a down payment on a house and begin a family. Well, guess what? After we bought our first home, we continued to base our lifestyle on that one income alone while still banking the other two. And to make a long story short, after a few years, we sold that first home of ours took the money from that sale, rolled it into the next house, and then we began to snowball our savings and snowball our income into paying off that mortgage, which we quickly did, and we've been mortgage free ever since. Now, what were my friends doing during this time? Oh, they were spending money like there was no tomorrow. They were eating out on credit cards and carrying the debt and carrying the balance. They were buying expensive cars and not saving a penny for their future. Fast forward to right now. Here it is 42 years later. My wife and I obviously are no longer kids. We're fully retired, 100% debt-free, mortgage-free, have been for a long time. And yet, I drive a pickup truck that is 11 years old and it has 140,000 miles on it. I don't have to go out and get a new one. I could, but why should I? This truck is still in excellent shape. It looks good. And by continuing to drive this truck instead of going out and buying a brand new one, I'm saving $750 a month. That amounts to about $9,000 a year. By cooking most of our meals at home, instead of eating out, we spend about $300 or $400 a month at the grocery store, as opposed to the $1,200 a month that we would be spending if we ate in restaurants all the time. And by the way, the savings from these two items alone amounts to about $20,000 a year. That's right. By not carrying a $750 car payment and not eating out in restaurants all the time, that saves about $20,000 a year. Do that for 10 years and you have saved yourself $200,000. That's how quickly it adds up. And because I drink very little and I don't smoke, I save hundreds of dollars more each month. Not to mention that I'm in good health for my age, which also keeps my medical costs down. It's true. If you will live like no one else, then later you can live like no one else. Now for me, none of these things has ever felt like a sacrifice. It has never felt like a hardship. And I never felt like I was depriving myself for going this direction. To the contrary, I wanted a home more than I wanted anything else in the world. I wanted a home that was mortgage free. So I said no to the things over here so that I could say yes to the thing that I really wanted the most, a home of my own. My truck, it works perfectly fine. I eat healthy meals every day of the week. Our home kitchen is the best restaurant in town. And I wake up every morning with a clear mind and feeling energetic. On the other hand, if I was still having to work at this stage in my life, in my 60s, because I had to make a payment, now that would be a sacrifice for me. That would be a hardship, and that would feel like a burden. Going into debt on credit cards so that I can eat salty and greasy inflammatory foods that makes me feel like crap. Well, that would be a hardship. And that would be a burden, and that would be a sacrifice. Because I've avoided these kind of money traps, I've been able to allocate most of my money for most of my life to the things that are most important to me. Things like having a safe, comfortable home, mortgage-free, and having the money to be able to maintain it. Things like being able to buy the groceries that I like, higher quality foods that are healthy for me without having to scrutinize the price of broccoli or whatever. Things like eating in a nice restaurant when my wife and I would like to have a night on the town, and we do that on a regular basis now without having to order from the value menu. Things like having fun and recreation and not having to worry about the cost or the price of it. So you get the idea. I read a story recently about two sisters who are in their 70s. One sister has been frugal and wise with her money for most of her life, and the other sister was a hopeless spender. One day she vented to her sister about the state of her finances and said, "Well, it's easy for you because you have money." And the frugal sister replied, "I have money because I didn't piss it away on things I didn't need and things I couldn't afford." She's 78 years old and lives a stress-free life. She said, quote, Everything I have is a result of being diligent, but not cheap. I travel, my finances are in order, I'm stress-free, and I have a lovely home as a result of thinking about money before I spend it. What words of wisdom there are. People say that money can't buy happiness, and I suppose that is true on the most basic level, but on the other hand, not being strapped for cash and having enough money to cover the necessities of life can resolve so many of the problems that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. And in that sense, money does bring a certain measure of happiness into our life. And what I mean to say is this: the amount of inconvenience that you might feel from not driving a brand new car, or not having the latest iPhone, or not being able to eat in restaurants every night of the week is nothing compared to the stress that you would feel when the rent goes up and you can't afford to make the rent payment. Or you get older and you can't afford to retire. Or someone you love gets sick and you can't afford to take off so that you can take care of them. Or you need some dental work and you can't afford to get it done. Now, this is how most Americans live. This is the typical American lifestyle, and it's considered normal. But it doesn't have to be that way. So I want to encourage you to break the cycle. Live like no one else so that later you can live like no one else. Identify the things that are most important to you, and then begin making the financial changes towards those goals. You'll never feel like you're being deprived because you're working towards the things that you want the most. Trust the process, stay consistent, and you'll get there. Well, that's all for now. If the typical American lifestyle of living with payments your entire life doesn't appeal to you, I'm interested in knowing what your thoughts and opinions are, so leave me a comment down below. Always remember, other people read your comments, and no doubt they will be very helpful to those people. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button. Feel free to subscribe. Take care, and we'll see you next time.